Whether you're a fine artist, a software engineer trying to solve a complex problem, or an entrepreneur launching a new venture, the principles are the same.
And to even begin this, we have to clear the air around that word steal.
Definitely.
When you hear it, I mean, the immediate psychological flags go up. You think plagiarism, intellectual property violation, unethical behavior.
Of course.
But we have to move past that shock value because the source material demands it. The foundational statement for this entire philosophy, it's attributed to Pablo Picasso.
Who famously said.
Art is theft.
And that quote isn't a justification for, fraud or anything like that.
No, not at all. It's a declaration of reality. It's the ultimate license to engage with the past. And the approach laid out in this journal, it's designed to get you, the diligent creator, doing one specific thing.
And that is?
Casing the joint. You're meant to be constantly consciously observing, collecting, and archiving ideas, bits of language, observations, influences.
So it's an active process.
It's a highly active, rigorous practice. And that's what transforms a casual consumer of culture into a highly effective, creative kleptomaniac. One who steals in the most transformative, ethical, and valuable way possible.
Okay, so that distinction, the theft that transforms versus the theft that just, plagiarizes, that seems like the most critical starting point.
It's the philosophical anchor for the whole practice. Because before you can successfully steal, you have to shed the greatest psychological burden of all.
The myth of originality.
That's right. The sources are absolutely clear on this. This idea that we have to generate innovation from a vacuum, that we must be the first person in history to conceive of an idea.
It's paralyzing.
Not only is it paralyzing, it's patently false. Great artists, great scientists, great entrepreneurs, anyone who has truly moved the needle knows that nothing comes from nowhere.
So every idea, every breakthrough, every song, every business model, it's all an assembly of what came before.
A sophisticated assembly. Cleon calls every new idea simply a mashup or a remix of two or more previous ideas that existed in separate domains.
And recognizing that truth, that nothing is completely original, that's got to be profoundly liberating, right?
It is. It moves the focus away from this impossible task of generation and towards the much more practical skill of connection.
Which is why we need this moral compass, this explicit line between good theft and bad theft.
Exactly. And the source material provides a brilliant, really detailed comparison chart that's designed to guide your methodology. This is the difference between being a respectful student of history and just being a lazy copycat.
Okay, let's unpack these 6 crucial pairs, because this is really where the rubber meets the road. This is where the operational guidelines for the practice truly live.
So the first pair is all about intention. Bad theft degrades the original work.
It cheapens it.
It cheapens it. Good theft, on the other hand, honors it. Now, degrading is simple to understand. You take a revolutionary concept, you strip it of all its complexity, you cheaply reproduce it, and then you sell it for a quick profit.
You're disrespecting the effort, the depth of the original.
You are. But honoring is completely different. Imagine an architect who studies Frank Lloyd Wright's fundamental principles of integrating structures with nature.
Okay.
Now, degrading that would be just slapping a random stone veneer on some cookie-cutter house.
Right.
But honoring it is taking those principles, the open floor plan, the use of indigenous materials, the cantilevered roof lines, and applying them to, say, the design of a modern, sustainable urban school complex.
In a totally different context.
A completely different climate, a different cultural context. You've studied the source material with such rigor that you understand the underlying principles and you elevate them through a new application.
I see. That makes sense. What's the second pair?
The second pair addresses the quality of your input. This is fundamental. Bad theft involves skimming. Good theft requires rigorous study.
So the difference between a quick Google search and, say, a PhD dissertation.
Yes. You can skim a dozen articles about deep-sea exploration and think you understand the topic, but that only leads to shallow work.
But study means going deep.
It means going deep into the methods, the failed experiments, the political context, the logistical challenges. It means reading the original research papers, spending days sketching the structural failures of early submersibles.
You're analyzing the physics of it?
You're analyzing the physics of deep-sea pressure. You can't successfully remix something or transform it if you only understood, say, 30% of how it worked in the first place.
Your theft has to be based on mastery, not just a superficial glance.
Exactly. Mastery, not superficiality.
Okay, so the third pair speaks to source diversity. Bad theft steals from one. Good theft steals from many. Now, this is where the legal and ethical boundaries can feel a little blurry, and I think we should push on that.
It's a really important point.
If you're only drawing influence from one source, you're essentially creating a derivative work that risks being an imitation, or worse, just outright plagiarism. The lineage is too obvious.
That's the danger of singularity. If you only model your business after one other successful company, you're just a clone. You're not innovating.
But the source material is advocating for synthesis.
Yes. Imagine you're developing a new type of financial literacy platform.
Yeah.
You steal the user experience design from a successful gaming app.
Okay, that's one source.
Then you steal the explanatory clarity from a famous astrophysicist's lectures.
Man is third.
And you steal the customer service model from a boutique hospitality chain.
Ah, that's fascinating. So by pulling these disparate elements from totally different fields, gaming, astrophysics, hospitality, the individual steals kind of cancel each other out.
They do.
Mm.
The resulting whole is novel precisely because the synthesis is unique. You obscure the original lines by creating a complex tapestry. The quality of your theft is directly proportional to the variety and depth of your influences.
Which brings us to the fourth pair, which is about accountability. Bad theft is plain plagiarism. Good theft involves giving credit or, and this is crucial, achieving transformation. But I want to introduce some friction here because this is where the framework gets challenging. If I rely on transformation to shield me from giving credit, am I not just engaging in clever, maybe legally risky avoidance?
That's a crucial question.
What's the difference between achieving transformation and just being clever enough to hide the theft?
The ethical mandate here is about the spirit of the work, not just the legal letter of copyright law. If you're deliberately trying to change the work just enough so you don't have to cite the original source,
When your intention is off.
your intention is fundamentally exploitative. That aligns with degrading and skimming. However, transformation, in Clayon's definition, should be so profound that the new work stands on its own merit. It generates its own unique emotional, intellectual, or commercial value.
So it's not about hiding, it's about creating something genuinely new from the old parts.
The transformation should be a complete change in medium, in context, or in essential purpose. So if you take the rhythm of a specific drum beat, a classic example of musical theft, and you use it as the underlying mathematical structure for a piece of generative AI art.
The output is so different from the input.
Exactly. The credit isn't strictly necessary because the original source is honored by the complexity of the new creation.
Which leads directly to the core action. Bad theft simply imitates. Good theft transforms.
Imitation is static. It preserves the original state. Transformation is dynamic. It destroys the original context to create something new.
Can you give us an example?
Sure, think about fashion design. Imitation is producing a cheap, identical knockoff of a designer dress.
We see that all the time.
All the time. But transformation is taking the underlying geometric pattern of that dress and applying it to, say, the structural design of a pedestrian bridge.
Whoa, okay.
Or the flow of a modern ballet routine. You have transformed the raw material by changing its purpose and its scale entirely. The medium itself acts as the welding torch.
And the final pair is the ultimate goal, right? Bad theft is a straight ripoff. Good theft is a creative remix.
That's it. A remix acknowledges that culture is a living, breathing loop. A ripoff tries to extract value from the original without contributing anything back.
But a remix?
A remix uses the original as a springboard to add new layers, new context, new meaning, and that then becomes available for the next generation to steal from. It's generative.
So those 6 pairs, honors versus degrades, study versus skimming, many sources versus one, transformation versus plagiarism, transforms versus imitates, and remix versus ripoff. That's the map.
It's the essential ethical and operational map for this entire creative kleptomania framework.
To really drive this home, we have to talk about T.S. Eliot. His take on this is just stunning. He wrote that immature poets imitate, mature poets steal.
Bad poets deface what they take, and good poets make it into something better, or at least something different.
That is such a challenging and powerful statement. He's equating maturity with the audacity to steal.
He is. The immature poet is trapped by their own reverence for the masters. They can only replicate the surface level. But the mature poet has achieved a level of mastery that allows them to interact with the material on an equal footing.
They claim it for their own purposes.
Exactly. And the mechanism for this successful theft, Eliot specifies, is welding it into a whole of feeling which is unique, utterly different from that from which it was torn.
That welding metaphor is so key. Welding requires intense heat and immense pressure.
the heat of your own creative drive and the pressure of rigorous daily practice. And the act of welding, it fundamentally alters the physical structure of the metal. It fuses disparate pieces so completely that the original boundaries are gone.
So when you look at the final product, you shouldn't be able to see the seam where the 19th century novel met the modern gaming app.
You should only see the unique new creation.
So if we accept this philosophy, it completely changes the job description for a creator, doesn't it?
It does. We're freed from that paralyzing burden of trying to make something out of nothing.
It simplifies the task immensely.
It does. From one of, divine manifestation to one of practical, diligent labor. Your job is no longer to be a genius waiting for lightning to strike. Your job is to become a professional collector,
A curator.
a curator of brilliant ideas, observations, and influences. Your primary responsibility is just to collect good ideas. And the richer, more diverse, and more deeply studied your swipe file is, the more complex and successful your welds will be.
Okay, so if the philosophy is about ethical transformative theft, the next question is the how. How do we actually operationalize this constant collection?
That's where the core tool comes in. The physical manifestation of this practice is the journal itself, which Cleon calls the swipe file.
Your personal creative treasury.
That's a great way to put it. It's designed to be the physical location to keep scraps of stuff you've stolen. If you encounter an interesting phrase in a conversation, a compelling rhythm in traffic, a surprisingly effective solution to a problem in a totally unrelated field,
You put it in the swipe file.
you put it in the swipe file. It's the repository for all your raw, unrefined material ready to be studied and welded later.
And what's so validating about this approach is its phenomenal historical pedigree. This isn't some modern productivity hack.
Not at all. It is foundational to intellectual and creative genius across disciplines for centuries. The sources remind us this is not new. Look at the list of brilliant minds who relied on this habit.
Charles Darwin, for example.
Right? Darwin used his notebooks not just for biological fieldwork, but famously to record observations on seemingly unrelated topics like human emotion and social structures. He was constantly connecting what he saw in nature with what he saw in society.
His notebooks were interdisciplinary synthesis machines.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then you have someone like Thomas Edison.
The ultimate inventor.
His notebooks weren't these neat ledgers of success. They were rigorous logs of failure. He meticulously documented every failed attempt, every wrong material. He was turning even his mistakes into collectible, actionable data.
He was literally stealing knowledge from the process of elimination itself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We also see it with Pablo Picasso, whose sketchbooks were visual swipe files. He archived forms, colors, and anatomical distortions for later use.
Virginia Woolf used her journals to refine language and explore narrative voice.
And Beethoven's sketchbooks are legendary. They show his compositional process, not just writing completed music, but collecting fragments, testing themes, assembling musical ideas long before they ever became a final symphony.
And the list goes on. Marie Curie, Leonardo da Vinci, Frida Kahlo.
It spans science, art, literature, music, invention, philosophy. And it underscores a crucial point. This collecting and connecting function of the notebook is universally necessary for high-level creative production.
It shows that these minds were not passive recipients of inspiration.
No, they were active, highly organized architects of their own intellectual input. They made sure they had rich reservoirs of collected, studied observations so that when the moment came to weld a new idea, the raw material was abundant and ready.
So the journal operationalizes this collection with 3 core rules. They sound deceptively simple, but I imagine they require immense discipline.
They do. Rule 1, carry it with you everywhere you go.
The reason being that great ideas don't wait for you to sit down at your desk.
They don't. They happen while you're stuck in traffic, waiting for a coffee, or eavesdropping on the subway. If the swipe file isn't there, the fleeting idea is lost forever. Mobility is key to comprehensive collection.
Okay, rule 2.
Do at least one exercise every day. This is the consistency factor. It's not about length, it's about momentum. A brief 10-minute engagement is exponentially more valuable than a 4-hour marathon once a month.
And the third rule.
The commitment device. Repeat the first 2 steps until the pages are full. This gives you a defined endpoint. It prevents the journal from becoming this perpetual unfinished project.
It creates a psychological distinction between the input phase filling the pages and the output phase, creating work from the material.
Exactly. You commit to completing the resource repository.
This focus on daily consistency reminds me of that Mary Oliver quote in the sources about fighting procrastination.
Oh, it's so relevant.
Yeah,
I think we're creative all day long. We have to have an appointment to have that workout on the page.
because the creative part of us gets tired of waiting, or just gets tired. The appointment is everything.
And the source material is really practical about making that appointment achievable. It suggests setting aside just 15 minutes a day.
And using those in-between times, like your commute or a lunch break.
Right. And it also champions ownership. If you see a prompt in the journal that feels stale or uninteresting, you could cross it out and replace it with your own. The goal is engagement and flow, not dutiful obedience.
And the outcome of all this daily practice of casing the joint, is a profound transformation.
It is. By the time the pages are full, the sources promise that you will have achieved a fundamental cognitive shift. You will have learned to see both your influences and your mundane everyday life as endlessly valuable raw material for your work.
And that unlocks the entire creative cycle.
It does. The final step is taking that collection, everything you studied, observed, and stolen, turning it into transformative work of your own, and then releasing that finished product back into the world.
Why? Why is that last part so important?
Not just for the sake of the product itself, but so that others can study it, be influenced by it, and ultimately steal from you. It's a dynamic, regenerative loop that ensures the cultural conversation never stops.
Okay, now we get to the core of the methodology. The exercises themselves. These aren't just suggestions, are they? They're more like forcing functions.
That's a great way to describe them. They are designed to physically and psychologically extract the raw material we've been collecting, organizing it for the eventual welding. They disrupt your autopilot.
Let's start with the prompts focused on external input and observation, the literal techniques for casing the joint.
The first one is deceptively simple, but incredibly powerful. The focused observer. The prompt is, for 1 week, sit or stand in the same spot for 15 minutes every day. Each day, write down the most interesting thing you see.
The psychological goal here must be to defeat habituation.
Exactly. And the novelty bias. We're conditioned to always seek new things. But if you force yourself to look at the same seemingly boring scene repeatedly, a park bench, a coffee shop corner, the view from your window, you stop just seeing and you start observing.
You notice the microstructure.
The subtle shift in light that lasts 3 minutes, the specific cadence of a dog walker who passes every day, the micro movements of a tree branch in the breeze.
And that kind of disciplined, sustained looking is what separates an amateur from a seasoned professional in any field that requires detailed observation.
It is. Whether it's character development in fiction, spotting minute changes in scientific data, or diagnosing structural weaknesses in design, you train your eye to find the richness in the familiar.
Okay, what about the found inspiration prompts?
These emphasize accidental input. Take the tea stain prompt, make a cup of tea, set the used tea bag on paper, and reflect on what the stain reminds you of.
So it's creativity via accident?
It is. It forces your mind into abstract association, using an uncontrolled mark on a page as a prompt for narrative or visual creation. You are turning discarded waste into the beginning of an idea.
And the instruction to list 10 things lying around that nobody's using. That seems to shift your perspective from consumption to potential.
It does. It asks you to recognize overlooked or forgotten potential in your immediate environment. This is a foundational entrepreneurial mindset, identifying latent value in the collected resources.
And of course, the prompt that requires a little social espionage, eavesdrop on a conversation.
Be a creative spy.
Chuckles. I think that's the one prompt where Cleon should have added a disclaimer. Wear really large sunglasses and a trench coat so you look professional, not creepy.
Right. But the purpose is brilliant. You are stealing raw dialogue, authentic cadence, real-world conflict, idiosyncratic vocabulary that you could never invent from scratch.
So when you're writing dialogue for a script or designing a user interaction, lifting those elements from genuine social exchange adds an invaluable layer of realism.
It does. Then there are the sensory and contextual prompts, which further mess with your perceptual modes, like watching a TV show with the sound muted and then inventing your own dialogue.
Especially for something highly visual like a soap opera.
That's a powerful technique for isolating elements for theft. In a soap opera, the visual delivery, the intense expressions, the dramatic body language is often high stakes, but the actual script might be, manipulative or dull.
But when you mute the sound,
You steal the cinematic drama, and then you can remix it with your own invented, possibly more potent, emotional, or clever dialogue. You learn to separate the power of the visual artifact from its existing narrative package.
And similarly, the prompt to go to the movies and try to draw in the dark, that forces abstraction, right?
Completely. You can't capture precise visual detail, so you are forced to capture the essence, the movement, the emotional architecture of the scene. It's stealing the feeling of the movie, not the frame-by-frame realism.
So now we shift from that external observation to internal investigation, the self-reflection and inventory prompts.
Right. These are about using your own psychological state, your emotional history, and your energy levels as raw material,
And it begins with the personal audit.
which is an essential status report. You list recent victories and recent losses. This acts as a moment of grounded reality. It's very difficult to chart a creative course if you're actively denying either your current emotional successes or your professional setbacks.
You have to acknowledge the topography of your current state.
And crucially, you audit your time. You map your typical week and reflect on whether that map is smaller or bigger than you initially thought.
Then there's the direct energy management query, identifying what excites you, labeled do more of this, versus what drains you, labeled do less of this.
This is perhaps the most practical prompt in the entire journal. Creative energy is a finite resource. If you don't track where your energy leaks are, the admin tasks, the toxic relationships, the unnecessary meetings, you can't optimize your practice.
So by explicitly naming the drains and increasing the activities that genuinely fuel your creative engine, you're fundamentally optimizing your performance.
You are. And that simple question, when was the last time you really had fun, is such an important check on playfulness. Play is often the critical low-stakes environment where breakthroughs happen.
If you're not having fun, you're often just doing tedious labor.
Right. Then there are the deeper, more challenging prompts, like confronting fear.
This one is powerful, writing down everything you are afraid of and then ritualistically crossing out each item as if slaying a dragon with a sword.
Fear is the great paralyzer of creativity. It manifests as procrastination, self-criticism, the inability to ship your work. So this exercise is a psychological maneuver. You externalize those fears, give them a tangible form on the page.
And then you perform a ritualistic destruction of them. You clear the mental space occupied by doubt.
It's an act of purging. And it's similar to the prompt about listing things you've been fired, expelled, or disowned and then scribbling over it. It's about releasing the psychological drag of past shame.
And finally, the professional identity questions, which are all about clarity and distillation. They ask, what are you really working on?
And they force you to articulate it simply. Even more constrained is, describe what you do in 6 words.
That 6-word description is a brilliant constraint. It forces maximal clarity. It's not just a party trick. It's a necessary strategic exercise. If you can't define your mission or product simply, you haven't truly refined your concept.
The source gives the example, I am a writer who draws. It's precise and evocative,
And then you have the prompt to make up 10 pseudonyms for yourself.
which is a subtle but effective exploration of identity. You're trying on different creative personas, testing how different names or roles might free you from the expectations attached to your current identity. It's low-stakes identity theft for creative growth.
Okay, let's move to the most advanced stage. Synthesis and transformation prompts. This is where the raw material meets the welding torch.
This is where the skills of collection truly pay off, and the exercise of blackout poetry using the excerpt from Herman Melville's Moby Dick is a perfect example.
It's an exemplary piece of transformative theft.
It is. It's the perfect illustration of transforming high-density, authoritative language into something immediate and personal. The instruction is to use the provided passage chapter, the chase second day, and black out 1 word at a time until you are left with a poem.
And the choice of that passage is deeply significant. Why Moby Dick? Why that specific chapter?
Cleon is giving you rich, thematic ore to mine. The excerpt describes Captain Ahab's relentless, monomaniacal pursuit of the whale. It details the incredible, almost superhuman skill of the veteran Nantucket commanders, who can foretell the exact movements of the whale even when it's out of sight.
And Melville contrasts this ancient skill with modern industry.
He does, and here's where the language is genius. He contrasts the skill of these old whalers tracking a mythical beast with the precise mechanical predictability of the modern railway. He calls the train the mighty iron leviathan of the modern railway.
So you have 2 leviathans, one of nature, one of industry.
And he notes that doctors time a baby's pulse with less precision than men time the arrival of the train. Yet, the Nantucketers timed the other leviathan, the whale, with that same invincible confidence.
So the language is rich with themes of relentless obsession, industrialization, human skill versus nature.
And predictive confidence based on deep knowledge. When you force yourself to black out words from this dense thematic tapestry, you are distilling those historical concepts into a modern, perhaps emotional, personal artifact that reflects your own state of being.
You're stealing the best words, the most potent vocabulary, and repurposing them. It's the ultimate weld.
It's fusing 19th century epic language with your 21st century personal narrative.
The other synthesis prompts deal with structure. The source includes these visual graphs illustrating how every story has a shape.
Right, classic arcs like Good Fortune, Ill Fortune, Cinderella, which is Rise, Fall, Rise.
Boy Meets Girl, and the tragic arc of Kafka's Metamorphosis.
These shapes are stolen tools in themselves. They are proven successful narrative skeletons. By studying these basic structural models, a creator doesn't have to reinvent the wheel of plotting.
You can focus your cognitive energy on unique characterization or thematic depth instead.
Exactly. And the inclusion of the Pixar fairy tale template illustrates this brilliantly. It's a clean, 5-part structural outline.
Once upon a time, every day, one day, because of that, until finally.
This template is so effective because it ensures a clear causal chain. It establishes the baseline, introduces high stakes, forces consequence, and guarantees a satisfying resolution. Stealing a simple, effective narrative skeleton like this frees you to be creatively anarchic with all the details you fill in.
And finally, there's the conceptual outlining prompt, developing a syllabus for a class you'd like to take or teach.
This exercise is a profound way to test the strength of your knowledge and interests. Designing a course forces you to articulate what you know, organize it logically, and defend your choices of required materials.
And more importantly, it immediately identifies the gaps in your own knowledge.
Yes. What courses are needed in the world that don't exist yet? What are your next learning priorities? It turns consumption into curriculum design.
We've established the philosophy and the daily mechanics. The final section of this deep dive addresses the long-term and probably most difficult challenge, sustaining the creative life.
But dealing with the reality of persistence and contribution.
The primary tool for this, for reinforcing behavior, is the 30-day challenge box.
Right. You pick one task. Maybe it's consistently doing the focus observer exercise, or just sitting at your desk every morning at 7 a.m., and you mark it with an X daily.
And the mantra is, I will not break the chain.
This removes the psychological friction of choice. If the box demands an X, you comply. It leverages the Seinfeld method of productivity. The visual momentum of that unbroken chain is motivation enough.
And by the time you've strung together 30 days, that action has begun the journey from difficult discipline to ingrained habit.
Yes. The journal understands that large, transformative creative achievements are just the accumulated sum of consistent, small, daily acts.
Beyond just habit, the framework pushes you to strategically reflect on your career and your contribution. There are these crucial prompts about the secrets of your trade.
What are the non-obvious secrets of your trade? What would you lose by sharing them with others? And conversely, what would you gain?
This forces you to confront the scarcity mindset versus the abundance mindset.
It does. The scarcity mindset dictates that knowledge is a fixed resource, and if you give it away, you lose your advantage. But the abundance mindset recognizes that sharing your unique, hard-won knowledge, your secrets, often builds your reputation.
It establishes you as a thought leader and generates trust.
Which leads to greater opportunities for collaboration, speaking, or teaching.
And speaking of collaboration, there's a highly strategic prompt dedicated to reframing competition.
Yes, identifying your direct competitors and then developing a deliberate, actionable plan to turn them into collaborators.
This is high-level strategic thinking, moving past the zero-sum game.
Your competitor likely has complementary skills or access to a different audience segment, or they've mastered an area where you're weak. By collaborating, co-authoring a product, combining resources for research, launching a joint venture, you can tackle a much bigger problem than either of you could solve alone.
So good theft, studying what your competitor does well, is often the necessary precursor to good collaboration.
Absolutely.
Then we get to the really deep, legacy-focused questions. The big picture reflection prompts you to write your own obituary.
And the optional constraint adds another layer of distillation. Writing it using nothing but 6-word sentences.
The obituary prompt forces your present actions to align with your future legacy. If you know how you want to be remembered, it informs your daily priorities.
And the 6-word constraint? It's typical of Kleon. It forces that reflection into its clearest, most essential form. Lived fully, shared freely, learned everything. Whatever it is, it shows you the arc you're aiming for.
You also reflect on what you accomplished last month, in the past year, and in my life.
Those checkpoints are essential for fighting creative burnout and the feeling that you're just stuck in the daily grind. Seeing concrete achievements laid out over varying timescales provides necessary perspective and momentum.
And inevitably, everyone hits the wall. That phase, often called the dark night of the soul during a large project.
The journal acknowledges this specific state of deep self-criticism. It notes the realization, it's done and it sucks, but not as bad as I thought. It would be good to finish because I'll learn something for next time.
That reframing is so crucial. It's the recognition that the value of creative work isn't solely in the output, but in the process.
Even a failure is a valuable data point. It's a foundational steel of knowledge for the next iteration.
And in those moments of block and self-doubt,
The source material offers the timeless advice of Franz Kafka. Sit at your desk and listen. It's a reminder that even when you feel empty, the most important action is just showing up, being receptive, and trusting the process you've built with your swipe file.
the final call is to community and sharing your work.
Yes, Cleon encourages you to show your work by posting journal pages online with the hashtag SteelJournal. You're encouraged to plan a journaling meetup with friends or colleagues, pick a prompt, set a timer, and share the results.
This sharing component closes the loop on that philosophy of abundance.
You move from private collector to public contributor, participating directly in the creative conversation. And the final instruction is simple generosity. Give a copy of the journal to somebody who could use it. You pass the framework on.
So once the pages are full, once you've completed this phase of intense collection and self-analysis, what comes next? What do you do then?
The first, most important instruction is just to keep up the habit. When these pages are full, you start a new notebook and you carry it everywhere. The practice itself is the ongoing work.
But the sources also provide a curated next-level list of inspiration for further consumption.
Yes, more things to rigorously study and steal from. The specific examples provided by Cleon are themselves a form of highly targeted theft. It's a recommendation of proven raw material.
Right, he says. Books to read. Learning by Heart by Kent plus Stewart.
Movies to see, beauty is embarrassing.
And Music to Listen to, Curtis Live by Curtis Mayfield.
This list is an instruction manual for advanced input. It's Cleon telling you, if you understood the methodology, now go study these specific texts, films, and music. Dive into the heart of their methods, analyze why they work, and deepen your pool of influence for the next cycle of creative welding.
It provides the map for the next stage of the journey. You've learned how to collect. Now you must keep feeding the machine with quality, studied input. This has been an intensive deep dive into the practical reality of creativity. We've covered the philosophical and moral guidelines that clearly define ethical stealing versus, degrading plagiarism.
We established the essential tool, the mobile, daily, transformative swipe file.
And crucially, we broke down the psychological mechanisms behind dozens of actionable creative prompts, from turning a tea stain into a narrative starting point and leveraging constraints like the 6-word description, to mastering complex narrative structures and confronting your deepest fears right there on the page.
The entire function of this framework is to teach you the most valuable creative skill there is: how to treat your influences, your daily life, and your internal psychology as valuable, endlessly available raw material for creation.
It truly is the ultimate shortcut to being a producer and architect of culture rather than just a passive consumer. But here's the provocative thought the source leaves you with, tying together the ideas of legacy, creativity, and the end of all things.
The journal asks you to imagine the world is ending, and you need to leave a message for alien explorers.
So if every new idea humanity ever had was a sophisticated blend, a remix, a transformative weld of everything that came before, what single truth, what essential piece of collected and remixed wisdom would you leave behind?
What would you select as the final ultimate steal from humanity to ensure the conversation continues elsewhere?
That is the ultimate creative challenge.